This is kind of a completely random topic, but I kind of thought about this while watching a Demon Slayer edit on TikTok because that's just what I do sometimes. And the idea behind what I want to talk about today is that sometimes authors who write stuff are wrong. And it's okay. They can be wrong about the stuff that they write themselves, that they make out of their own mind, that they create themselves. It is okay to be wrong sometimes. It is okay to just have the fans say, hey, we'll take it from here. We got this handled. We understand what we want to do here. And then kind of just going their merry way. And obviously, I'm being a bit sarcastic here. I'm being a bit like hyperbolic, just saying that the fans can kind of override the author. But there are some scenarios in which I feel like the author makes a decision that you can just kind of ignore. And I think the most famous example of this is once again from Demon Slayer, which is kind of one of the why I wanted to talk about this. And the main reason why is because the author of Demon Slayer at one point said that the all the like the effects that you see, the fire, the lightning, the water, and all that stuff just doesn't happen in the actual world of Demon Slayer. Like those are only effects that happen for the viewer, for you, the watcher, to kind of keep you entertained. And I think that's genuinely like one of the stupidest decisions you could possibly do as an author of all time. Like that is kind of one of the coolest things about the entire show is the visual effects and all the stuff that happens when they're fighting. And to go in and say that, like, yeah, the people who are actually in this world don't even see any of that stuff, you just gotta ignore it. It's something you have to ignore because I can't fully imagine that these people are just fighting demons and fighting like actual crazy monsters and stuff like that. And then the elemental shit that they're producing just doesn't exist in that world, but the demons still do. That's just something that I can't accept, and it's something that I feel like would make it so much worse because they look like a bunch of fucking idiots just going fire breathing, first form, and then they just swing their sword around like a dumbass the entire time. Doesn't really make it doesn't really make it that I feel like I can respect the people, even though obviously once again they're fighting against demons and fighting for their lives and trying to save the world. But it just feels like it has so much less impact if they just don't have any of the any of the special effects there. So that is something that you literally just have to look at the author straight in the eyes and say, hey, I understand you wrote this. I understand you put probably your life into writing this and coming up with the design, all the characters, drawing it and stuff like that. But you're wrong in this instance. You, about the story that you wrote yourself, are wrong in this instant. Those special effects do exist, and they exist for everyone in the show. Everyone can see it. And if you say otherwise, you're just wrong. And obviously, a big part of this is just like aura and hype moments, which, sure, that's the thing that happens. And I feel like, once again, this is one of the only times where the aura and hype moments are vital to the plot because they get so much worse if you're looking at Rengoku on the end of Mujin train against Akaza, and he's like setting your heart ablaze, and then he's just like hitting that pose, and then there's just nothing around him the entire time. Like that makes it so much worse, even though once again he is fighting for his life and kind of just having one of the greatest final stands you'll see in the show. But the fact that there's just no fire there, like it makes him look a little bit more stupid. And it kind of just takes away from the moment. Because if I'm just thinking to myself now while watching this, in one of the more emotional moments of the entire show, like, damn, this fire's not even here. He just kind of just standing there like an idiot. It is just, I don't know why it gets in the way for me if I simply don't have this delusion that, once again, the author is wrong and that the fire and water and all the elemental effects are there. I think another funny example of this, and it's kind of just like goofy overall to think about, is in One Piece. I guess the people, if you can't use hockey, the idea is that you can't see hockey when people are used. So you have like all this shit when like Luffy's in Gear 4 and he's bound man, and he has like the hockey on his arms, and he looks kind of goofy even with the hockey on his arms. As they people who can't see hockey just see like a puffed up dude like that who just kind of looks like a goofy, like cartoonish guy, which is kind of the point of the show. But I think it's also another funny thing of just this is like an acceptable thing. I still think I'm just gonna be stupid enough to assume that the people who can't use hockey still see it, just because once again I feel like it makes some of the stuff look a little bit stupider, like especially if Zoro coats his sword in hockey like that. It kind of just like it makes it so much less impactful if he's just coating his sword in like hockey and then just no one can fucking see it unless they can also use hockey. It is kind of just like a funny thing too, where it's just if you actually once again get these like extra parts of information, extra pieces of information, it can kind of just make the show seem a lot goofier. I don't know why it's like this is particularly the anime thing. Maybe it's just because those are like the two examples that come to mind when I'm thinking about this. But I'm assuming there's a lot more examples in other shows too, for people who are more aware of all pop culture and all, shows and TVs and movies, where just sometimes the author is wrong. Sometimes there's a small little detail that they just explain that completely changes the way the show is viewed, and sometimes you just have to ignore it. Like, does the plot of Demon Slayer change in any capacity if those effects don't exist in the world? No. But at the same time, I feel like the story is so much better if you just say, yeah, they're pulling out this bullshit live and alive right in front of these demons because once again, there's demons that exist. They're allowed to have fire and water and stuff like that. Okay, they are allowed to have a little bit of a treat when it comes to fighting for their lives. So that's just kind of like something that I thought was really funny. And I really want to know. I really want to see if I can think of like any other examples of this in my own time of just you having to completely reject the author who does know everything about the piece that they're writing, everything that they know. They have it planned out meticulously. They spent years of writing, and you just reject something that they say about their own story because sometimes it is okay to say you're wrong, you're incorrect about this. Let the fans handle it. Even though the vast majority of the time this isn't the case, the fans should not handle the vast majority of stuff. But sometimes if it makes it the story a lot cooler, the fans should be allowed to handle it because I have an ego and I want to feel more involved in stuff than I actually am. So that's just kind of a random thing I wanted to talk about. I don't know if anyone else can think of any other examples of this where the fans just outright fucking reject what the author said about the show because they think it makes it worse. So it is also just funny that once again, this only applies to stuff that doesn't affect the plot, and it is just a completely inconsequential thing to have and thing to view. It's just a funny thing that once again I got reminded of because I was watching a Demon Slayer edit of the newest movie, so I didn't really want to talk about what it was because it might be spoilers for anyone who hasn't seen it. Because I think it just released on like streaming not too long ago, and that'd be kind of a dick move. But anyway, that's really all I wanted to talk about for today. So please, if you have another example, please enlighten me. I'd love to see it. But that's it. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.